Good morning. Earlier today, 3 individuals were arrested and charged in federal court with operating a sophisticated, high-end brothels in Cambridge, in Watertown, and in Eastern Virginia. These establishments were allegedly promoted through 2 different websites, BostonTop10.com and BrownEyesGirlsVA.blog. The 3 individuals behind these websites facilitated the movement of predominantly Asian women across the United States for sex trafficking and a commercial sex ring, exploiting them in the process. This commercial sex ring was built on secrecy and exclusivity, catering to a wealthy and well-connected clientele, and business was booming until today. It's alleged that the prospective sex buyers in this scheme first had to respond to a survey and provide information online, including their driver's license photos, their employer information, credit card information, and they often paid a monthly fee to be part of this illicit club. The affidavit that's unsealed in court today alleges that once the buyers were verified, they were then texted and allowed to place orders with commercial sex workers. They would choose the duration of this encounter they wanted, the types of services they wanted, and they also would receive a menu of different options and different women that they could purchase, sometimes at rates between $350 and $600 an hour. The menu included photographs of the various women who were available that day. And the defendants then directed the sex buyers to various apartments in Watertown and Cambridge and Virginia where they engaged in commercial sex. The 3 individuals who were charged today for running this ring are as follows. Han Lee of Cambridge, Massachusetts, was the alleged leader of this organization. James Lee of Torrance, California, was also charged and arrested this morning. And Young Mung Lee of Dedham, Massachusetts, was also charged. The 3 individuals are charged with what we call conspiracy. And here it's conspiracy to violate a federal statute known as the Mann Act, which prohibits coercing and enticing individuals to engage in illegal sexual activity or prostitution. According to the charging documents, these 3 individuals made hundreds of thousands of dollars running this ring. This case goes back to the summer of 2022, when investigators identified several buyers through surveillance, phone records, and interviews. According to the charging documents, the buyers who made up this ring hail from an array of professions. They are doctors, they are lawyers, they're accountants, they're elected officials, they are executives at high-tech companies and pharmaceutical companies, they're military officers, government contractors, professors, scientists. Pick a profession, they're probably represented in this case. They are the men who fueled this commercial sex ring. And the government alleges that there are potentially hundreds of individuals who took these services as commercial sex buyers. The buyers in this case are not charged today. They're not named in the affidavit. But I want to emphasize this is an investigation that's just getting going, and we're in the very early stages. Federal agents today are collecting even more evidence than we had before the day started. Multiple search warrants are being executed at locations in Massachusetts, California, and Virginia. And as alleged in the affidavit, this commercial sex ring used common tools of internet commerce to fuel demand. Buyers could become pre-cleared through a website known as Preferred 411, as described in the affidavit. The affidavit alleges that this was operated essentially like a TSA pre-clearance, where they could access sex services and have already been vetted. There was also another website that was accessed by individuals who participated in this commercial sex ring called eroticreviews.com. That operated much like Yelp and provided ratings on women who could be purchased through this commercial sex ring. Today's charges should make one thing clear. No one is above the law. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what your job is, how much money you have, engaging in commercial sex rings, as alleged in this indictment, is illegal. And we're committed to working closely with our federal, state, and local partners to hold accountable the people who both ran this ring and the people who fueled the demand for this ring. This office has been working incredibly hard over the last year and a half, and actually over the last several years, engaged in these types of prosecutions. We stood up a unit in the United States Attorney's Office in 2022 and created 3 dedicated federal prosecutors just working on human trafficking and civil rights prosecutions. And this is the 16th case we brought in the last 15 months of this nature. We've brought cases of labor trafficking, human trafficking, civil rights violations. And this case today is one more reminder that this type of conduct is happening in our neighborhoods. It's happening in Massachusetts. It's much more prevalent than people think, and we are dedicating the resources to make sure that it stops. Human beings are not for sale. As I said earlier, this investigation is in the early stages. I expect there'll be more information coming out in the coming weeks. And before I turn it over to my partner, Michael Kroll, from the Homeland Security Investigations, I want to commend our state and local partners. The Commissioner of Police from Cambridge is here. We work in close collaboration with our state and local partners. This is the kind of case that starts with tips that come in, and we work these cases together. And I think the public should know that law enforcement is incredibly unified, and it's a lot of great work by HSI, by the Cambridge Police, Watertown Police, and other law enforcement agencies that gets us to be able to bring these types of cases that we hope have an impact on our community. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Kroll at HSI.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Levy, Commissioner Elo. We appreciate your partnership and leadership on this important matter. As we all know too well, the scourge of human trafficking must be met with concerted action. Today and every day, all across the world, Homeland Security Investigations Special Agents and our partners work to shine a light on these heinous acts, bringing a trauma-informed and victim-centered approach to protecting the dignity of survivors, but more importantly, ensuring perpetrators are held to account. Human trafficking is an abhorrent crime. It affects an estimated 25 million people in the United States and abroad. Victims too often suffer in silence, violators too seldom brought to justice. Today's enforcement action is a reaffirmation of HSI's commitment to seeking justice for the exploited, hearing their stories, refining our craft, and taking those lessons learned to stop these horrific acts from ever being repeated. Please know that we will continue to bring the full weight of HSI and DHS, our resources and dedicated personnel, to bring awareness to this pervasive threat. But rest assured, we will always protect those who cannot protect themselves. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I want to thank all of the partners assisting in this important investigation: Homeland Security, the Cambridge Police Department, Postal Inspection Services, and the U.S. Attorney's Office out of Massachusetts. Sex trafficking crimes disproportionately exploits people from our most vulnerable and marginal communities, people who feel like they do not have a voice. It is through these investigative efforts that we shine a light on sex trafficking as a global issue that needs not only global attention, but also local attention, so that we can hold those accountable who profit from these heinous crimes and provide necessary resources and support to our victims and survivors. I am grateful for the work that has been done and really humbled for all the work that still needs to take place. Thank you.
Yeah, not going to get into the details of that. It was a tip we received from local law enforcement that got us going on this.
Have you given any assurances to some of the clients to get information from them as far as that prosecution?
Not going to get into the details of what arrangements have been made. Hold on, one at a time. Go ahead, ma'am.
It says roughly 20 customers, alleged customers, were helping with the investigation according to the complaint. So are there some that were assisting? Can you speak to that?
I'm not sure we used the word helping. I think the affidavit talks about people that were interviewed after they had engaged in commercial sex as part of this ring. They're a small portion of the number that are out there.
Judge, so can you just explain why, for want of a better word, the Johns are not arrested yet? And what would be your message for people who are going to find themselves on the client lists?
Well, my first message is don't participate in this kind of conduct. That's my first message. We're in the first or second inning right now, and we bring the charges we have available at the time we need to take down an operation like this. But we're in the early stages, and I don't have any message for the people who've already participated in this.
Do you think there will be charges against clients coming down the path? Because a lot of people look at this and say, why is it just the looters that get their names out there? What about the Johns themselves?
I think I hopefully made it clear in my remarks. We are in the early stages. We're working with our state partners on this. There's some things that are illegal under federal law. There's some things that are illegal under state law. But we're just getting going.
You mentioned elected officials. You mentioned elected
Hey,
officials.
Elected officials, people's security clearances, I mean, this raised a lot of questions. Are you able to say anything about who these people are?
I'm not able to say anything about who they are right now. We included the detail we included in the affidavit to give everyone a sense of the prevalence of this and the types of people who are participating in this activity, in case people have misconceptions that it's only certain populations that are engaged in this type of conduct. But at this time, we're not able to share more details.
If you know something about an elected official, don't you think the voters should know that as well before they go to the polls?
You know, we have to balance a lot of things in what we can disclose to the public. We're not, at this time, able to share any more information.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the girls, the victims here? I mean, are they victims? Are they enslaved as a part of this ring? Were they making money as a result of it? Where do they fall?
And how many?
So I'll take the second question first. We don't know how many because, as I said, we're conducting searches right now. We know that several women were advertised at a time, and those names changed and the pictures changed, but we don't have a full count right now of the people who were involved in 2023 and in prior years. And to your question about the women who were involved and who were exploited in this commercial sex ring, we don't have that information right now, but that's one of the many avenues the investigation commissioner put so aptly. We're humbled by the work we have in front of us.
Your indictment says that they put disclaimers on their ads saying any payment is for companionship and anything more than that is consensual. Does that not hold weight in court? How do you get beyond that to say, no, what they were paying for?
Yeah.
Sex?
We're going to follow the facts where they lead, and we're not going to accept what's written in a disclaimer box as what actually happened. We have evidence of what happened, and that's what's undergirds the charges in the complaint.
Any undercover agents, or is it all from the Johns?
Not going to get into investigative tactics.
Are you able to reveal how these three people allegedly recruited these women? Where did they come from? Are they from the United States? Are they from overseas?
Yeah. So I'm not in a position to answer that question right now. I think it's probably clear from what you've already read that this operation was just taken down today, and we have a lot of work to do.
Did the investigation start in Virginia, or did it start in
Not going to answer that question.
Just one question for you. Last name Lee, is that a coincidence for all three of these defendants? Are they related in any way?
I don't have the information to answer that question, whether it's a coincidence or not.
For those two websites, the P401ID and the Care ID, could you go into those a little bit more? Like, are these known entities that are used in this illicit industry? That's how they continue with it.
I don't know if we have more information on the actual that we can share about those websites. Why are things allowed to exist? I think there's a lot of things on the internet and on the dark web that can be used for legal and illegal purposes. So we're not in the business of regulating what's on the internet. We're in the business of prosecuting criminal cases.
Your indictment says the brothels continue to operate. Was that as the time of the indictment, but not as of today?
They're shut down today. And just to be clear, there's not been an indictment which is returned by a grand jury. There's been a criminal complaint.
The criminal complaint mentions they were still operating. That was at the time of the writing of the complaint, but.
Correct. Correct.
So as far as the alleged customers, you mentioned there being hundreds, do you think charges coming against?
Well, I think that we can say that there were hundreds of buyers. As to what happens to all those buyers, and I can't say what's going to happen at this point.
How will you
Would they be
decide,
charged in federal court or local?
Still to be determined.
how will you decide your ability to or desire to charge one of these hundreds of clients?
You know, I'm not going to speak for how other prosecutors make their decisions in the state, but we look at every individual case, and we go through the principles of federal prosecution to decide if prosecution is warranted on the facts and the evidence in that for that individual. We're not going to. It's not going to be a class action. We're going to take a close look at every individual situation. If we're considering additional charges, additional defendants, we'll do it the same way every time.
Should we expect charges to come, or should we temper those expectations?
It's hard for me to set your expectations. Other than to say that we expect by the end of today, we have a lot more information than we had at the beginning of the day, and we're going to go through that information and follow those leads where they take us.
So now are we going to be saying, like you said, they only charge the bosses and the clients get out scot-free?
I think it's hard to tell the final score of a game in the first inning. So I just don't think I wouldn't draw any conclusions that we're done with our charging decisions based on what we did today.
Josh, did you say on Lee, he's the?
She is the
leader of this group?
Mhm.
And what are the roles of James Lee and Youngman? What were their roles? Are you able to say how this was organized?
You know, I don't have more information than what's contained in the affidavit. I think the affidavit describes the roles that those other two individuals and Miss Lee played in the whole overall operation of the ring.
Are you confident that you've gotten to the top of the ring so that your actions today are actually putting a stop to it? Or do you think it's bigger than what it is?
You know, I put that in the category of things we need to do. I think that there are other commercial sex rings like this operating in other states, maybe operating in our state. And we certainly don't think that this one case today, is going to bring that whole industry down. Part of the reason we bring cases is for general deterrence and to let people know who are operating these types of rings that incredibly talented agents and incredibly talented prosecutors to my left are working these cases. And so if you're running one of these rings, if you're buying from one of these rings, take notice today that we're out here.
Can you give us a better sense of how this went down? You described, how they would solicit the sex, but where would it go from there? I haven't read this with a fine-tooth comb yet. So would they go to a hotel? Would the female workers come to them? How would it play?
In broad strokes, as described in the affidavit and as alleged, and these are allegations, I want to underscore that, the people who ran the ring, Miss Lee and her subordinates, they rented apartments in Cambridge, Watertown, Eastern Virginia. So once someone was sort of vetted through the process, they would receive a text from the provider of the commercial sex, and the buyer would go to that apartment, and they would have the encounter, and then they would leave. So as far as we know right now, there weren't hotels and that type of thing. It was rented apartments. They were rented by the leaders of the ring, and that's where the encounters happened.
But the guise of the new photo shoots, where was that posted? Did anyone actually think that they were signed up for that?
It is, well, our view, as alleged in the affidavit, is the nude photo shoots is a ruse to get people into their site. Sophisticated buyers out there who are looking for this type of thing know that's a indirect way of advertising this type of services. I think I can't rule out the fact that some people actually went to the website for the services offered, but I think that people who engage in this type of behavior generally have an understanding of what the signals are in an advertisement that someone's selling commercial sex.
High-end brothel, is that because of the price, because of the clients, because of the setting? What makes it a high-end?
I think that description is based on the clientele, the hourly cost of up to $600 an hour, the types of places where it occurred. It's, if you think about how sex trafficking is often displayed in the movies, it's at a curb, people pull up on the road and that type of thing. This is not that operation. This is an operation over the internet, and with a clientele that is not going to be driving around the streets necessarily for this.
These apartments, did they rent them for a month at a time and move on and keep moving around, or was it always the same place?
It varied.
So with neighbors, people living by it, any sense of what was going on?
I don't have any information on that.
One more question, I mean, this screenshot of the text message you have is from the perspective of the buyer, the screenshot is from the buyer's phone. Is that a cooperative buyer, is that an undercover agent?
That, I'm not able to answer that.
And just one more try at this, like a lot of these jobs are things that are in the public interest, a lot of people wanna know, wow, as professors, as politicians, are we gonna know more about this, like in the near future, or in the distant future, or?
I think you have to wait and see. It may be surprising sitting out there. It's not surprising up here that the people who have those jobs are engaged in this type of behavior, and that's the demand that fuels these kind of commercial sex rings. So it's certainly part. When I say it's early stages, that's a significant part of what else is going to be looked at.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.